standing here in our front greenhouse where we keep our indoor bonsai, and of all the indoor bonsai, I always tell people that the ficus is by far the easiest of all the indoor subjects. They're easy because they're true tropical and they don't suffer that much. Many of the other so-called indoor trees like the Chinese elms and other varieties are really subtropical and they are much better grown outdoors. But the true indoor is the ficus. And here you are, these are medium-sized ones. We've got ficuses bigger than this. And these so-called medium-sized ones, look at it, it's about 4 foot wide and about 4 foot high. And it's so dense. Many people like them because they look healthy and dense. But I know that this is not how a ficus should look. They should be pruned much more to give them a more refined look. If we go to some of these other ones, now at the other extreme, these have been shaped in an S, but they have had all their leaves removed and the new leaves are coming. So this is the structure you want to create. Let me show you some other examples before I show you how the pruning is done. So you can see some of these other ones. Here we have more ficuses like that. These are also in an S shape and these have been pruned. So they've got to be constantly kept neat and tidy so you can see the branch structure. And because this is a greenhouse, they're growing so strong and healthy. Look at some of the other larger size ones. So there are so many different sizes of ficus that we have. So all these have to be pruned eventually. We can't just leave them to their own devices. Let me show you how to prune some of these big ones. In fact, I had started doing some of these. This is only half finished, and this is almost completely finished. So this was pruned only a couple of days ago, and before it was pruned, it looked like this, completely dense and very compact. So let me work on this one. I'll work on a couple of these trees just to show you the general approach and principle to pruning this type of tree. And when we prune, we use just simple tools, the pruning shears or the twig shears, or you can use the trusty old Velcro secateurs. So the object again is to maintain a triangular shape. And not only that, we want to create a structure so you can see through the branches. If you look at this one, which I've just done a day ago, you can see I've created a structure and they're without their leaves, but the leaves will very quickly grow again. When I was in Taiwan in November of last year, we saw these large ficuses, which are exhibition quality trees, and believe it or not, they remove every single leaf when they display their ficuses. So they're shown almost like a deciduous tree that you would find in the tropics. But I'm not going to be as drastic as that, because most people who keep the ficuses like them for the foliage, but for the lush green. But this, in my view, is too lush. And I think if you didn't prune the ends, now this shoot here, let me just take this off. As you can see, it's all green. So this has grown in the last 2 weeks. So can you imagine in the summer, if I didn't prune it, it would be out this size. So we've got to tackle it. As we say, we've got to bite the bullet. Now, I've got to decide which is the front and which is the back. Every tree has a front and a back. And I think a cursory glance will confirm that this is looking like the front. So let me begin by creating space, bearing in mind that I always have to keep in mind the triangular shape, but creating space is my first priority now. Don't be afraid to tackle it. These have been left for quite a few months when they were shipped out from the east. So they've grown a lot, but we've got to tackle the pads. For those who are real connoisseurs at growing the indoor trees, I think you will have figured out that a greenhouse environment, an unheated greenhouse, I would say, is the best environment. If you heat it, it can get quite warm. I'm talking of the temperate countries. For those of you who live in the tropics, you are very lucky. You don't have to use a greenhouse. I always used to admire the ficuses that I saw in India because they don't have a tradition of growing trees like the Chinese and Taiwanese do. So they are trying their different styles, but the classic styles which you see in China and Japan and Taiwan are almost like the temperate climate trees, like your pines, maples. So they are given that shape. So the pads or the structure of the bonsai is very, very important. So that is a classic pad. So let me go on to the next one. So this one, the way I'm doing it is almost like topiary. Topiary is simply like pruning this sort of pom-pom shape, for want of a better word. Anything spoiling the shape, I take out. This ficus, like most other ficus, tend to have these lovely aerial roots, and we can just keep them and encourage them to grow. You can see I've done that pad. So in each instance, you see I'm taking a couple of inches off. If you didn't do that, all this will grow into each of the other layers and you lose the structural shape. But don't be worried, especially in the summer. These new shoots will grow so quickly that within a blink of an eye, you will see all the new shoots appearing again. You see how I've created the pads there? And I dare say if you just stuck this in ordinary soil, you get a new plant. So there are hundreds of cuttings here. Let's see what the pruning shears are like for trimming. They are as good. As you do more and more bonsai, you will realize that there are certain tools which you like to handle. It's not a case of you have to use this tool and not the secateurs. Whichever tool does the work or works for you, that is what you should use. But what I do emphasize is having good tools. There are some cheap scissors you can buy, but the cheap scissors don't do the job properly. When you handle a nice tool, nice pruning tool, work becomes much easier. You don't have to struggle. So you see how I've pruned the shoots to create more space and more defined pads. Now the back has got more branches, but I still need to tackle it. I'm doing it fast because I do this all the time. For those of you who are not familiar with it, you may have to look at each shoot and then decide whether to cut it off or not. But for my purposes, it's really almost like topiary. I do this and then look at the structure more carefully. And then I will analyze and see if there are any crossing branches that need to be removed, and so on. I have to be very careful not to snip my finger off. When you do it so fast, there's always a danger. I've done it so many times in my bonsai career. And if you have very sharp tools, you can slice the tip of your finger. Take it right off. Many people are afraid of doing this because they think the tree won't grow again. No, they will grow again, very quickly. I can see why people like the Ficus retusa, because the leaves are relatively small. If you try to grow a banyan tree leaves are like 6 inches long by about 3 inches wide. Large oval shape. And there are so many other varieties. The Bodhi tree, the Ficus religiosa, that is heart shaped with a long tail. That's a different shape. You notice that we are now in March, the middle of March, and things are starting to grow very strongly. I wouldn't recommend doing it in the winter, because in winter you don't get any new growth, so it would be dangerous to prune it then. I'm switching out to the Felcoat because there's some strong shoots which the scissors can't tackle. Sometimes I remove a few of the aerial shoots if I feel that they're detracting from the shape of the trunk or the view of the trunk. So as we say, too much of a good thing can turn out to be detrimental. And you notice that sometimes the branches also begin to curl up, like that one, curling up. And you may have to consider wiring out to flatten it more. The natural tendency of all branches is to reach the sky. So if you don't want it to do that, you may have to wire it down. So I'm taking good 2 inches off the top of this pad to flatten it. Notice that where some of these twigs don't get light, they do die. So light is important for all trees, not just the temperate climate trees, but also the tropical trees. If the inside doesn't get light, they will just wither away. I'm now pruning the top to balance what I've done to the rest of the tree. And if I wanted to create more space, I can create another pad. Just like topiary, you can do what you like. I do emphasize that the tree has to be strong and healthy. If the tree wasn't strong and healthy, you wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing to this tree in this fashion. So you need a lot of strong shoots to be able to trim them off. And then you can go inside the structure and thin some of those out. Letting air in. If you don't let air in, the inner twigs do die. See, I created a very subtle tear-like shape there. I will have to show you this again when the new leaves come. Again, if you home in on the structure, you see how complicated it is. There's so many aerial roots that the aerial roots tend to hide the structure of the trunk. So again, there's a fine balance to be struck between showing the trunk and letting some of the aerial roots grow. So looking at this tree, I can see straight away, if I wanted to see the trunk more, I could remove that branch. But since it's taken so long to grow, I will probably leave it well alone. It's only dangling by an aerial root. But even if you removed it, it would still look all right. When you run a commercial nursery, like we do, we sometimes have to bear in mind that what you as a bonsai worker likes is not what always the customer likes. So I have to bear that in mind and not to keep doing things that I think look right, because other people may like a different look to it. So I always have to strike a balance, what I call the halfway house. That means trying to anticipate what the customer wants, what another person may like. Many people in bonsai are very arrogant. They think that whatever they do right is the answer to everything. It's not so. Different people have a different view. And you've got to respect their views. I will just show you again. I could keep going on and on, but I won't. So you can see what I've done now. If you look closely at this tree, you can see structure now. And if we revert to one at the back here, if we turn out carefully, you see how dense this is. This is crying out to be done as well. So this will have to be done and thinned out a bit. And if we look at some of the other ones, let's revert back to these ones. And you see how dense these are. These will also have to be done. As I say, I don't want to keep doing all of them because some customers may like it. But no, let me do this one because this is crying out to be done. Look at it. It is so massive, so dense. So just shows how much I'm cutting off. Look at that. That is a good 4 inches or more. So these have all grown too long. My favorite expression is that it'll reach the sky. Let's Let me just do one pad and show you what I mean. I should be wearing my left-hand glove just in case the scissors slips and gets my finger. So that is just one pad done. Look at it. I've just done one pad. And then I'll let that grow again. Now let me look at the next pad. So we're always just looking at pads. Look again at some of the ones that I haven't done, just to show you the contrast between a bush that has not been pruned, it is in fact a bush, and what I'm trying to achieve by pruning it. You can see how the structure on this is beginning to evolve. If I go to the back of this tree, you can see the big difference that I'm talking about. So at the back it is completely bushy, just one massive blob. And that, in my view, shouldn't be what a bonsai looks like. I know that people who grow them will be very proud of having such a healthy tree with all that foliage, but I know that it isn't quite right. I need to have some structure there. To me, that is just one massive big green blob. And if I can just go back to one that I just pruned earlier on, you can just see how we're trying to create that sort of structure in the tree. See, where you can see the trunk and you can see the layers between it. Sometimes I could even remove some of these major branches from the front to create more distinctive pads. Like this one, I did remove some of the ones in the front to show you how the trunk should look. So this is showing the trunk much more, and the overall shape is there, but I haven't scalped it entirely because, as I said, I've got to bear in mind that not all my customers would like it too bare. They sometimes like a very full looking tree. So just to show you the contrast between one that has not been pruned and one which I'm in the process of pruning. So I'm going to carry on doing just a little more. So I'll hand the camera over to Tracy here. So I'm going to work on this pad here. I brought my left-hand glove out because I wasn't feeling confident about not taking the tip of my finger off. So easily done. And I noticed that this branch is tending to curl upwards. As I said, all tree shoots, if left to their own devices, tend to reach the sky. But I don't want that to happen. If we lived in the tropics, I bet you anything, within 2 or 3 days, this entire tree would be covered in leaf again. They are so vigorous. Having done it now, I don't think I will need to do it again for the rest of this year. Besides, we are in a temperate climate, and come the autumn and winter, I'm not going to get much growth at all. unless of course I kept it in a very, very warm greenhouse. It's a much cleaner pad now. Again, if it was my tree, I would take this entire branch off here to show the beautiful trunk. But as I said, not all my customers would like that, so I'm just leaving it. So you can see this bottom portion has been done. Those of you who have small ficuses will be wondering who buys these sort of big trees. In our case, many people who have these large, very spacious, light and airy offices, in fact I have quite a few customers who have that sort of premises, and these are the trees that go to them. They do extremely well in offices, but again, you've got to know what to do with them. Some people are very good at maintaining it, but others are scared. And again, I think most of the failures is forgetting to water or not watering enough. So this is still the front. So many twigs in here that there are quite a few dead twigs because lack of light, they're tending to die. Of course, the dome shape, my proverbial dome shape, is the overall look that I want to maintain or achieve. Turn this tree around so that you can see the back side. Come this side. So this is the back. And because this back has been hidden by this tree, you see the color slightly paler. And again, this is from lack of light. So you realize how important light is for growing plants. Inadequate light will result in a less healthy plant. Growing tropical plants in a temperate climate is quite challenging. So you need to have the right sort of environment. That means the temperature's got to be right, humidity's got to be right, and the light levels have to be right. If you don't provide all three, then the plants will struggle. Again, sometimes I don't like to have too many aerial roots, so I'm taking this aerial root off. I think if I plant this, I get a new ficus from it. So you can see how I've structured the tree now. I hope the editor can go back to the before shot. I'll show you some of the before shot. Okay, now let me turn around and come around the front again, and let's see. Look at the amount of trim. Look at the trimmings on the ground. That's a lot taken off. Really a lot taken off. And that is the result of pruning this. And then when the new shoots come, I will make sure that I will try and maintain this tiered effect, maintain the pads. As I said earlier, I'm so tempted to remove this branch, but I shan't, otherwise it may become too bare. So it's almost like treating it like a deciduous tree, with this long sweeping branch to the side and the structured tiers of pads. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing me do this. And of course I'm going to leave the other tree because some customers may want the fuller look. But this is how we trim our ficuses. So I hope you learned something from this one.